It was one of those gray Portland afternoons when the rain feels like a whisper, soft but constant. Droplets slid down the cafe windows, blurring the world outside into watercolors of passing umbrellas and glistening sidewalks. Inside Maple and Sage, everything was warm and curated. Edison bulbs glowed softly above reclaimed wood tables. A playlist of acoustic folk songs hummed in the background. Baristas moved with choreographed ease, crafting foamy lattes and plating avocado toast on hand-thrown ceramic dishes. Behind the counter stood Brenda Whitmore, the cafe's owner, a woman in her 40s with a sharp bob, tailored linen blazer, and a clipboard always tucked under her arm. She was proud of what she'd built. Refined but approachable, she often said, a haven for influencers, artists, and upwardly mobile brunch lovers. Then the door opened. A gust of wind and rain swept in, and with it, a man in a gray hoodie, dripping wet. Tall, black, maybe in his late 30s or early 40s. He carried a worn duffel bag, and his clothes hung off him like they hadn't been dry in days. His sneakers squelched with each step on the polished floor. Conversations in the cafe died down. Brenda's eyes locked on him immediately. She didn't smile. She didn't greet him. The man walked slowly toward the counter, water trailing behind him. His face was calm, his voice soft and respectful. "Hi," he said quietly. "I was wondering if you might have something warm to eat. I I don't have any money, but I'd be willing to work for it. Dishes, cleaning, anything." Brenda didn't move. Her expression didn't soften. "This isn't that kind of place," she said flatly. He hesitated. "Even just a cup of coffee. Please?" Brenda's arms folded across her chest. "I've worked hard to make this cafe what it is. If we start handing out free meals, we'll be swarmed. I'm sorry, but no." He nodded slowly, disappointment settling behind his eyes. Still, his voice didn't rise. "I understand. Thank you anyway." He turned toward the door, duffel in hand. A young barista named Tina glanced nervously from the espresso machine. She looked like she wanted to say something, but didn't. The man reached for the door. Before he could leave, Brenda added sharply, "Please don't come back. We can't have people feeling, uncomfortable." The door swung open. He stepped into the rain without a word. As it closed behind him, the cafe seemed to exhale. Customers returned to their drinks. Conversations resumed awkwardly. But not for everyone. Tina stood frozen, her hand resting on a mug she'd forgotten to serve, staring at the wet footprints fading on the floor. The door clicked shut behind him, and the bell above gave a soft, final chime. Inside Maple and Sage, there was a brief moment where no one spoke. Just the hiss of the espresso machine and the low crackle of rain against the windows. Then, slowly, conversation returned. Quieter, more cautious. But the tension lingered like the smell of burned toast. At the front counter, Brenda turned and walked briskly back behind the register, adjusting a glass jar of biscotti like nothing had happened. Her lips were pressed into a line. She didn't say a word. Across the cafe, two women in yoga gear whispered over their matcha lattes. One of them, blonde, leaned forward. That was uncomfortable. The other shrugged. Honestly, she did the right thing. You can't let homeless people hang around places like this. At a corner table, a college student in a hoodie sat quietly, phone in his lap. He had started filming when the man first walked in. He hadn't meant to, just instinct. Something about the way the man spoke, the way the room reacted, the way no one helped. Now he was watching the replay silently, thumb hovering over the post button. Behind the counter, Tina, the young barista with short curls and nervous eyes, was rinsing milk pitchers too aggressively. She hadn't said anything to Brenda yet, but she was shaken. She finally spoke, her voice just loud enough to hear over the steam wand. You could have given him something. A croissant, leftovers, anything. Brenda didn't look up. "Tina, you know what happens when you make exceptions." "He didn't ask for much," Tina replied, a bit firmer. "He offered to work for it. He was polite." Brenda sighed as if she were explaining something obvious to a child. "We are not a charity. If we feed him, word spreads, then more come. Then the customers stop coming. That's how it goes." Tina dried her hands and stared at the rain beyond the window. He looked like someone's dad. Brenda didn't reply. At that same moment, the college student finally tapped upload. The caption, he asked for food. She asked him to leave. Outside, the rain kept falling. Inside, the storm hadn't even begun yet. By the time Tina closed up the cafe that evening, the rain had finally stopped. The sidewalks sparkled with puddles, and the night air smelled like wet asphalt and fading espresso. Brenda had already left, retreating to her quiet home in the suburbs, blissfully unaware of the spark she had just lit. But back in a dorm room 3 miles away, the college student who filmed the encounter stared at his phone in disbelief. The video had crossed 100,000 views, then 500,000. By 11:45 p.m., it was over 1 million. The comments section was on fire. You never know someone's story. This is disgusting. He was calm, respectful. She treated him like dirt. That cafe's done, canceled. This is why people film everything. Proof. On Twitter, the clip was reposted with the caption, refused a meal because of how he looked. Hope you're proud, Maple and Sage. By morning, the cafe's Instagram page, once filled with pastel lattes and brunch plates, was flooded with angry comments. Brenda's latest post promoting her seasonal turmeric scones now sat beneath thousands of replies. Do you throw those scones at the poor, too? Unfollowed. Try seasoning your soul next time. The cafe's Yelp rating dropped from 4.6 to 2.1 in under 12 hours. Local news outlets picked it up next. Viral video sparks. Outrage Portland cafe turns away. Man asking for food. On the morning show, a split screen displayed the silent footage. The man in the hoodie, hands respectfully folded. Brenda, cold, arms crossed. The awkward silence of the cafe. The man walking back into the rain. One journalist commented he could have been anyone. A veteran, a father, a chef. The panel nodded grimly. Back at Maple and Sage, Tina walked into her morning shift to find the cafe eerily empty. No line out the door. No laptops glowing at the windows. Just Brenda, pale and stiff, staring at her phone. She looked up as Tina walked past. People are overreacting. It'll pass. Tina didn't respond because something deep inside her knew. This wouldn't pass. This wasn't a trend. This was a reckoning. And the man they all ignored? He was about to be seen by the world. The following afternoon, the clouds had cleared, but the tension inside Maple and Sage hung thicker than ever. The cafe, once packed shoulder to shoulder with influencers and freelancers, now sat half empty. A protest flyer had been taped to the window overnight. The words "We Remember" were scribbled in red across the chalkboard menu. Brenda sat near the front, refreshing the cafe's Google page on her iPad over and over. Each time, new one-star reviews appeared like punches to the gut. She muttered to herself, "It's the internet. This will blow over." But then, the bell over the door chimed. Brenda looked up, ready to greet a customer with forced politeness. Her words caught in her throat. He was back. The man from the rain. But this time, he wasn't wearing the soaked hoodie. He walked in with clean, dark jeans, a long tan coat, leather boots, and posture that made people straighten their backs just by being near him. His hair was tied neatly. His presence was calm, but commanding. And behind him, two people with cameras, a journalist holding a mic, and a growing crowd gathering outside, phones in hand. Brenda stood up, flustered. What is this?" The man stepped closer, a slight smile on his face. "I'm sorry. I should have introduced myself properly the first time." He reached into his coat and pulled out a business card. Sleek, black, gold lettering. Chef Marcus Duval. James Beard Award. Winner founder. The People's Kitchen Tina, behind the counter, dropped the glass she was drying. It shattered against the sink. "Wait, Marcus Duval?" she whispered. Brenda's face went pale. "No, that's not possible. You were homeless?" he offered gently. "No, I wasn't. Not exactly." He glanced around the cafe, remembering every detail. "I'm writing a book, a personal project about food, dignity, and how society sees people who have nothing. So I've been traveling across cities dressed down, showing up without a name, asking for a meal. Just a meal. His eyes met hers. And you told me I didn't belong here. Brenda's mouth opened, then closed again. She looked cornered, ashamed. Marcus turned to the cameras. I didn't come back to ruin this cafe. I came back to ask a question, not to her, but to all of us. He paused, then looked into the lens. What would you have done if I wasn't famous? The footage aired that evening on the local 6 o'clock news, but within hours, it had made its way to national headlines. CNN, the New York Times, the Today Show. Clips from Maple and Sage played alongside Chef Marcus Duval's calm, powerful voice. He sat at a simple cafe table during the interview. No lights, no stage. Just him, a mug of coffee, and the reporter opposite him. I didn't wear the coat. I didn't bring the press. I didn't flash a name, he said. I wanted to see if kindness had a price tag. The reporter leaned forward. What did you find? Marcus stared into his mug for a beat. Then, that for some people, dignity is only served when you can afford the menu. Clips from the viral video played again. The soaked hoodie, the quiet request, Brenda's sharp refusal. The interviewer asked, Why choose this cafe? I didn't, Marcus replied. The moment chose me. This story could have happened anywhere, and that's the problem. The screen cut to images of Maple and Sage the next day. Protest signs lined the sidewalk. Feed people, not prejudice. Would you feed him if he wasn't famous? Inside, Brenda sat in the back office, blinds closed, as her phone buzzed nonstop. Emails, news requests, apologies, and death threats. The cafe was no longer just a brunch spot. It had become a symbol, for better or worse. A voice on TV said, Chef Duval's experiment was never about one woman or one business. It's about a cultural reflex. To assume that someone who looks like they have nothing is worth nothing. Meanwhile, Tina watched the interview from her apartment, eyes glassy. She paused on the part where Marcus said, You don't have to be a chef to offer warmth. You just have to be human. That line stuck with her, because while the world was now debating racism, classism, and compassion, the girl behind the coffee bar had seen it all up close and done nothing. Not then, but maybe now. She could. It was a quiet morning. No cameras, no crowd. Just rain tapping softly on the windows again, as if the story had come full circle. Inside Maple and Sage, the cafe was nearly empty. The scent of espresso still hung in the air, but the space felt still, heavy. Brenda sat alone at a corner table, staring into a cup of untouched tea. The cafe's once busy rhythm was gone. She hadn't spoken to many customers in days. She hadn't slept much either. When the door opened, she didn't look up, not right away. Only when she heard the familiar voice. May I sit? It was Marcus Duval. No coat this time, no cameras. Just him, as he was. Brenda looked up startled. She nodded slowly. Yes, of course. He sat across from her, calm as ever. She couldn't meet his eyes at first. I didn't expect you to come back again, she said quietly. I wasn't going to, Marcus replied, but something kept pulling me here. Brenda sighed. You came to tell me what the whole world already has, that I'm a terrible person. Marcus shook his head. No, I came to ask you something harder. She looked up. I want to know, he said gently, if you've learned anything. Brenda was silent for a long time. Then, in a voice smaller than her usual tone, I was afraid, not of you, of what people would say if I didn't draw a line, if I looked weak. You weren't weak, Marcus said. You were conditioned. Her eyes filled. I thought I was being smart, protecting the business. But when I saw that video, when I saw myself, I didn't recognize who I'd become. Marcus nodded. I believe that. But recognizing it isn't enough. The next step is choosing who you want to be now. She finally met his gaze. Will people forgive me? Maybe, he said. Maybe not. But you're asking the wrong question. He leaned forward slightly. The better question is, will you start feeding people because it's right, even if no one forgives you? That landed. She looked away, took a shaky breath. Would you help me? I don't mean fix my image. I mean, fix the way I see. Marcus smiled faintly. I'm not here to fix you, but I'll stand beside you if you're willing to do the work yourself. A long pause. Then Brenda slowly reached for her notepad, the one she once used to track inventory and staff schedules. She turned to a blank page and wrote at the top, Community Table Plan. 1 week later, the rain had lifted. The sun stretched across the Portland streets, reflecting off windows still damp with morning dew. Outside Maple and Sage, a new sign had been added beside the front door. Handwritten in chalk, framed in wood, Everyone deserves a seat at the table. 1 free meal a day. No questions asked. Sponsored by community donations. People slowed as they passed, reading it twice. Some smiled. Some cried. A few walked in unsure at first, until they saw the long wooden table by the front window, the community table. It had no reserved seating, no judgment. It was for anyone who needed food, warmth, or simply the dignity of being seen. Inside, Brenda moved differently now. She didn't wear her stiff blazer. No more clipboard in hand. Instead, she wore an apron, the same as everyone else. She greeted every guest by name, including those who came in quietly, nervously from the street. And in the kitchen, Chef Marcus Duval. Once a week, he came in before sunrise with a box of ingredients. He didn't work for fame. He didn't charge a fee. He just cooked. Sometimes it was lentil stew, sometimes fresh bread, always made with the same care he gave to his Michelin-starred plates. On this particular day, he brought sourdough and roasted tomato bisque. He watched through the kitchen pass as Brenda knelt to serve an elderly man his first warm meal in days. She didn't flinch, didn't hesitate. She smiled. He watched as Tina high-fived a child after handing him a blueberry muffin on the house. He watched the community table fill with strangers, sharing food and stories like old friends. Marcus stepped out front as the lunch rush slowed. Outside, a few reporters lingered, expecting a press statement. Brenda stepped up to the door and flipped the sign to Closed for Rest, Back Soon. No interviews, just soup and dignity. Marcus turned to go. As he reached the corner, he glanced back once and saw something on the brick wall beside the cafe. A freshly painted mural. Simple, elegant, quietly bold. A figure in a hoodie, sitting at a table. Steam rising from a bowl. Hands folded in thanks. No name, no fame. Just a person being fed. Below it in small letters, seen, fed, human. Marcus smiled. Because this was the real win. Not the outrage, not the headlines. The table stayed.